All right. You saw the thumbnail. Let's get into it. Last video, we talked about what to name your pilot. This video, I told you we were going to talk about what to name your mech. And surprise, the answer is don't.
What? What?
Hang on. It's cool, all right? I got a whole thing, all right? Just walk with me here. Just walk with me, talk with me. This video is broken up into 3 parts. Part 1, popular media doesn't want you to name your mech. Part 2, Mech Media doesn't want you to name your mech. Asterisk. Part 3, Lancer RPG doesn't want you to name your mech. Let's go! When I say popular media, I mean non-mech TV shows, movies, music, video games, etc. Not that mech media isn't popular, but we're going to talk about it as its own thing. The closest thing to mechs in non-mech media are vehicles. So we're going to be looking at vehicles, pilots, race car drivers, that sort of thing. And when we look at these character-vehicle combos, some patterns start to emerge. Look at Top Gun. We have a bunch of code names, but the vehicles don't have names. It's Maverick and Goose on their planes, not Maverick and Goose in Golden Egg. Well, what about Speed Racer? His car is called the Mach 5. Yes, but Speed Racer is his actual name. So, does that count? It gets kind of weird if the vehicle's alive. Like, who was Knight Rider? Hasselhoff or Kit? Either way, only one of them had a code name, so that takes us to the thesis of this section. If the pilot has a code name, the vehicle does not need one. So you say, no way, Rodrigo. I can think of a dozen mechs with names. And I say, sure thing, strawman. Let's have a look at some of them. Here's some easy ones. Ariel from Gundam, Witch from Mercury, Gurren Lagann from Gurren Lagann, and the Danger from Pacific Rim. So, one thing all those mechs have in common, aside from being totally rad, is that none of their pilots have code names. Suletta gets called a witch, but she's not the only witch. She's also called the Groom, but that's not really a call sign, it's more of a title. There's another Groom before she gets there. In the thick of things, her allies still call her Suletta, or they refer to the Ariel. So Mech Media gives us the inverse of vehicle media. You codename your mech, but not your pilot. But why? This is a trend, but why is it true? Because those mechs have a history. The name tells you that this vehicle, this weapon, has its own story, its own legend separate from the pilots, greater than the pilots. In fact, in many mech stories, the pilot must strive to prove worthy of such a powerful machine. But that's not what Lancer's about. Yes it does. That's why CompCon brings up this prompt. Okay, put a pin on that. In Lancer lore, mechs, like pretty much every non-food thing, can be 3D printed with ease. Assuming you have a big enough printer and the right licenses, of course. When you look at Lancer's mechanics, the game stresses that mechs are printable and completely replaceable. The game is written in such a way that the players can customize their mechs before each mission to a frankly ludicrous degree. You can even print a completely different chassis, a completely different frame, assuming you got the license levels for it. And mechs aren't just replaceable, they're completely disposable. If your mech doesn't make it to the end of a mission, you can just print a new one for the next mission. There is no mechanical penalty for wrecking your mech over the course of a mission. If anything, you're going to get a lot of high fives from your fellow pilots if your mech and the boss for the mission end up as particles in the same crater. And honestly, I see a lot of Lancer character art on the internet, and people are like, here's my pilot, Sun Mask, and her mech, Heaven's Uncompromising Fist. And I think, did they start at license level 0? Did their Everest have a different name? If HUF gets destroyed, did they just roleplay that it didn't? Do they just say, this is HUF 2? Does the GM have to say, okay, they find enough of your mech to rebuild it? And if they do that, that's fine, but why? Why fight the game? Over and over again, in lore and mechanics, the game tells us that this is a theme. The replaceability, disposability, and are you ready for this? Instrumentality of mechs are aspects that are hard-coded into the game. If you choose to ignore these aspects, you're fighting the game. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about HASE. When you create a pilot in Lancer, and every time they level up, you put points into one of the 4 mech skills. Hull, agility, systems, engineering. But even though they're called mech skills, those skills are actually the skills of your pilot. And those stats follow the pilot to any mech they build. It's the same thing with talents. Those are your pilot's talents. They're your talents. Your mech can flash print like 10 different kinds of ammunition, not because it's a special mech, but because you know how to build like a badass combat printer. Your mech has a weird jury-rigged flight system, not because it came with it, but because you grew up in a space station and everything you build has a weird jury-rigged flight system. Mechs in Lancer are extensions of their pilots. They are tools to accomplish the pilot's goals. Very cool and totally rad tools, but tools nonetheless. So you don't pilot Heaven's Uncompromising Fist. Heaven's Uncompromising Fist is something you wield, something you're known for, something that follows you to every mech you build. So just to make sure I didn't miss something, I went to the Lancer Discord a couple times, and I asked if people could think of a very famous mech in the setting, and almost all answers were versions of this. Yes, the original X, which then was used by the manufacturer to create that license. So even when Lancer tells you that there is a mech out there that is weird and special, it's in the same breath as, here's the license for it, have fun printing your own. Okay, so whether I've convinced you or not, you're still wondering like, okay, well, what do you suggest I put down on CompCon when I make a new mech? And what I like to do is put the pilot's call sign and then something denoting what version of the mech we're on. So Mark 1, Mark 2 type thing. Wait, isn't that what we were doing earlier anyway? Yeah, maybe, but here there's no assumption that this is the same mech. In fact, it emphasizes the opposite. And it's fun to run up the number anytime you switch frames or when your mech gets destroyed. It can be a point of pride to have a low number while your group's Leroy Jenkins hits double digits 8 missions in. So yeah, I guess that's it. This is my argument as to why you shouldn't name your mech in Lancer. Hope it made sense. Oh, and so people don't get in my face about it. There really is a way to get to double-digit mechs in 8 missions. You just need some longer missions that have long rests inside them. Like, your crew is like, we are in the middle of a mission, but we found a friendly shop that can, like, fix up our mech so we can continue, or whatever. Whatever your game master says. You can have full rests and completely rebuild mechs in the middle of missions. So that's how Pizza can be Pizza Mark 10 8 missions in. I'm sure you were dying to know that. Anyway, like, subscribe, join my Patreon. These videos come out anywhere from a few days to up to a month early on Patreon. I just throw them up there as soon as they come out. So if you like them, think about getting involved with that. Catch you guys next time. Yeah, rock and roll.